Alright, what's the first thing that you would think of when I say the French Revolution? Some would say, wait, wasn't that the period of far-reaching social and political upheaval in France and its colonies beginning in 1789 and ending in 1799? And while others would say, wait, wasn't there like this lady queen person with this really big hair and she said something like, let them eat cake or something? And now that I say that, people are actually debunking that quote, and turns out she actually never said let them eat cake, so I guess that's just wrong. But whatever, today I'll be talking about the social structure before and during the French Revolution. First off, the French Revolution was caused by things such as bad governing systems, weak superiority within the government systems, and unfairness in the treatment of the people in France. France was ruled over by a powerful king and queen and had control over all aspects of society. If you were born into, let's say, royalty, you would live in royalty, you would marry in royalty, and then eventually you would die in royalty. And this was the exact same thing for the other two classes. You were born there and you would die there. There was no possible way that you could move up or down the ranks. Oh, how fun that must have been. The way that you were categorized in France was between three different classes: the first estate, the second estate, and the third estate. The first estate consisted of the clergies, which was the church people and the priest, and they made up 0.5% of France's population at the time. There was around 130,000 people that were part of the clergy's estate, and around 97% of France considered itself Catholic. The clergy collected that sweet tax money from the third estate. Being part of the clergy was lucky as they supervised education and did not have to pay taxes. The second estate was the nobleman class, such as knights and nobility, and consisted around 110,000 people and made up 3.5% of the population. Since they were in the second estate, these people were much higher than the third class, but a bit lower than the first. The nobleman estate also collected taxes from the peasants and took over military services, and just like the clergy, didn't have to pay a single dime in taxes. And now the last and quite possibly the worst class would be the third estate, as considered of the bourgeoisie, peasants, workers such as doctors, lawyers, and merchants. Let's say you were born in the peasant class. Good luck trying to survive past your 5th birthday. This class had absolutely no privileges and were forced to pay taxes to the church and landowners. Peasants made up 96% of all of the population of France. The majority of them lived in poverty, but around 2 million people considered themselves to be bourgeoisies, which would have been the middle class of the third estate. If you were a hardworking peasant, then 10% of the taxes that you paid would go toward the church. Now I understand why people got angry. The National Assembly played a major role in the French Revolution as it represented the common people in France, which would have been the third estate. They demanded that the king make economic changes so that they could eat more and better. In June of 1789, King Louis XVI called a meeting with the Estates General to address the financial crisis in France, which was made up of the three estates. But even in politics, the third estate was often cut short compared to the other classes. Although they had the same amount of voting power, they still could be outvoted 2-1 by the other estates. Fed up with the injustice, the third estate split from the Estates General and formed their own. But on the morning of June 20th, 3 days after they split, they found themselves locked outside of a usual meeting in the town hall. So they all gathered in a nearby tennis court instead. There, they all made an oath to remain together until the injustice in France was eradicated. When King Louis XVI heard of the formation, he held a gathering himself, trying to intimidate the third estate into backing down. But the group had grown way too strong, and the king was forced to recognize the group. Commoners rioted in protest, and fearing violence like an absolute coward, the king had troops stationed outside his palace for protection. The people blamed him for the failure of the Estates General, so on July 13, 1789, they raided the Paris town hall looking for weapons. The Third Estate stormed Bastille on July 14, 1789, after hearing about the large armory it contained and also to free political prisoners in spite of the king. Although the guards and king threatened them with violence, there was little they could do as the group had grown to intimidating numbers. Dubbed the Great Fear, attacks were made by the Third Estate on manors and landlords. This continued until early August of that year. Shortly after the Great Fear, the Assembly released the Declaration of Man and Citizen, and there were documents pretty much stating the rights a man should have, such as the right to be born and to remain free. After creating the documents, their peace was short-lived as King Louis XVI and his family were caught trying to escape France. Neighboring countries were worried about the state of France without a ruler and insisted that he return to the throne. As any country would, French leaders declared war on those who questioned their decisions. Scientists and philosophers shortly after the French Revolution began questioning things such as if natural laws apply to human beings. Instead of using faith and religion as they used before, they began to think with logic and reason, and even question the divine right of their kings. And remember, this was a time where people thought that God appointed people into power, so pretty much if you were questioning the king's right, you were questioning God's judgment. In January of 1793, King Louis XVI was executed using the infamous guillotine, and his wife, Marie Antoinette, followed in October of that same year to the guillotine as well.